I'm Erica Hollingsworth, and you're listening to the F1 podcast.
What's up, everyone? It is Ricci here from the F1 podcast. Today is Monday, May 6th, 2024. I'm with my lovely co-hosts, Erica Hollingsworth, Andrew Cleary. Happy Monday, y'all. Good to see you as always.
Happy Monday. Sorry if
Hey,
I sound terrible on today's episode. I'm under the weather, as the kids would say these days.
fortunately, I am bringing the fire and Andrew's lack of energy, absence, fun, having time thing. So, ooh.
I'll bring the energy. I just need a nice hot shower after and some tea.
He needs a hot shower and some sleepy time tea.
Oh yeah.
That is so attractive, Andrew, but not for this podcast. So, Erica and I had the opportunity of attending the Formula One exhibition in
There we go.
Toronto this past week. And it was really, first off, we just want to thank the opportunity actually going through it before it was open to the general public. If you've not seen the fire Instagram reel/TikTok that Erica did within like a matter of an hour after leaving the event, there was a lot of cool things, from Ayrton Senna's car to all the helmets.
So, one of the things that I've told a couple people now, this exhibition, this is the third city that they've brought it to. And what was kind of neat is that the collection of memorabilia, there's a few pieces they bring around, but there's also a couple things that you will only see in Toronto. So some of the things have been on loan or donated from local collectors and fans of the sport. So even if you were to have been in Madrid, or if they haven't really decided on other cities to bring this to, but if you're someone who's working on bringing it, things like that, it's a neat opportunity to kind of see what has stuck out to people. So I don't know if you know, Ricci, but some of those cars at the beginning, that's from a local collector. Those aren't necessarily
Yeah.
things going around. So lots of really fascinating history. If you're really into the technical side of things, there's tons of stuff for you there. And I loved it. I thought it was very well put together, super well curated, very interactive in a lot of ways as well.
I think
But
I think I think one of my last things about the exhibition is they had this thing for, I think it was Enzo Ferrari and Bernie Ecclestone. Like, I didn't really realize, we've all talked about his history in Formula One and some of the controversies that he's been a part of. But I really liked the end of the video about Enzo Ferrari and like the impact of Ferrari in Formula One. Quote, "The best Ferrari ever built is the next one."
yeah.
And like, so, but also we just want to thank like just the opportunity there. If you haven't checked it out, I will make sure it's posted in the comment section below. Also, just want to thank, we had a lot of fun at Trinity Common to watch the Miami Grand Prix. And I think I'm gonna be very honest, this has probably been the race of the season. The crowd was amazing, the bar was packed, the patio outside was packed. Our section was full, and like, we apologize to some people we had to turn away, but it just really goes to show just how much of a great atmosphere it is at that bar. And like, shout out to the staff as always. And next time we go again, we'll see if we can get more people at our section. But like, thank you. Like, we met, I'm giving you a couple call outs. Like, Erica, you had some of your family there. My dad was there. Laura D'Souza. We had, a big fan of ours, Claudia, come out. And the list goes on and on of all the fans that came. And just want to like say, like, that was a fun ass time on Sunday. I'm just going to be very honest as a Ferrari fan.
And as we get into talking more about the race, it's a great place to be to celebrate some stuff with some other people. 'Twas a time. It was electric. I was here for it. And with that said, shall we dive into our recap of the weekend? First and foremost, we got a little taste of the old Daniel Ricciardo when it came to sprint quali and the sprint. That was, I don't know about you, entirely unexpected.
Something about him being in the United States when he races, like he has that extra kick.
Had a really hot start to the weekend too, in that sense, right? But fortunately didn't carry over to Sunday. However, it's good to see that he get his first points of the year in some capacity at the track. And to finish up like in P4 was incredible, ahead of Sainz, Piastri, Hulkenberg, and Sonoda. A double points finish for Racing Bulls in the sprint. Maybe they want to have sprints then at every track now. because that seems to be the best way for them to maximize their points. I think with the rest of the setup.
I think like also yeah like the talk of that race is definitely Daniel Ricciardo, and like you even could see that Carlos Sainz was frustrated. He tried multiple times to try to pass him on that straightaway in that corner, and he just couldn't do it in 19 laps. He just couldn't do it.
I'd say, you're saying the talk of that race was Ricardo, but I also think Kevin Magnussen deserves.
You get a penalty. You get a penalty. You get a penalty.
I actually have a
He's
question.
giving Esteban Ocon a run for his money in terms of how many penalties you can acquire.
I have a question for you too. And I was thinking about this on the weekend when I was watching that sprint race, the abomination of a performance by him. We've seen this now multiple times this season where K-Mag has literally disregarded the rule book just so that his teammate could score points. And I understand defensive driving, but this is just kind of over the top in terms of how defensive it's really being. And when you're creating like 30 seconds worth of penalties in a 19 lap race, it's a little embarrassing. And now he has 10 penalty points, 2 more, I think, in the next couple months, and he's out for a race.
Yep.
But my question is based on this: should then the team be overall penalized because of that certain type of strategy where one teammate literally disregards the rule book for the other, in the sense they are like both entrants are technically disqualified, and then the points then associate from that.
Honestly, it's one thing when it's a one-off, right? Like,
Yeah.
people might get swept up in a particular race, not pay attention, etc. Shit happens, pardon my language. We see it all the time. This is, like you said, not the first time. And once an incident, twice a coincidence, 3 times is a pattern, right? So if I think we see this again, it's time for people to be like, perchance may we change the way in which rules are followed and applied, and perhaps add some new ones in there, because honestly, otherwise, what's to stop Alpine from doing something like
Yeah.
that with Gasly and Ocon too? Or like, who's to say that Aston Martin won't be like, hey Lance, do you want to be a worse driver? Because we could really use it to benefit Alonso's race, right?
Can you play bumper cars real quick with half the bridge? Just I don't know, just pull out the blue shell like this. What is this, Mario Kart? Just freaking
Yeah.
taking everybody
Well,
out.
I'm surprised like Lewis didn't want to go 12 rounds after that sprint, because him and K-Mag were fighting it out pretty hot for like the majority of the race. And if I was a betting man, I would have put a ring in the middle of the paddock there on the football field and just started placing bets, taking bets on this 12 round scrap
Who do you
that they
think would win?
showcased on. Oh, I think Lewis, man. I think Lewis would beat K-Mag.
I think he's so sneaky. Like, we know he's pretty calm under pressure and like can collect himself, so he'd be livid, but he would have a very focused direction for his rage and could just one knock.
I think Lewis would have kind of like more of that. He'd be elusive like Mayweather in that
Yeah.
way too.
That, or I think, we might see Kevin, take a moment to collect himself, summon the courage and the spirits of his Viking ancestors,
Mm.
have them channel their rage and energy and avenge themselves from whatever battle in which they had fallen to take vengeance upon Lewis Hamilton. So it could go one of 2 ways.
Too bad he would accumulate a 10-second penalty for doing that.
And then served it incorrectly.
Served it
to
incorrectly.
deal with the fallout of that.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of problems with people's in trying to serve penalties. Like I don't know, things were getting flown left, right, and center this weekend.
Because Hamilton had the same problem, right, in turn 1, which was a bit of a shit show to begin with, when Alonso got turned. It was really confusing, and I felt bad for Lando Norris because he was the ultimate recipient of the damage, where he kind of had no opportunity to avoid, because you had Stroll really pushing in on Alonso, and then you had Hamilton on the inside going into turn 1. Lance again doesn't use his head and just completely turns in to Alonso. Not even looking. I don't even think he looked in his mirrors, which then caused Alonso to stop. But at the same time, we had Hamilton doing his best Ayrton Senna impression. If you see a gap, you got to go for it. Absolutely bended up the inside, clipped Alonso, which then clipped kind of Stroll, forced Stroll to move over to the left, and then ultimately hit Norris, which then ended his sprint race. And I even said it to Erica, I sincerely apologize on behalf of the Aston Martin fans, because we have some incompetency when it comes to one of our driver seats.
You know what? After Sunday, I'm cool with it.
But speaking of taking penalties like incorrectly, Hamilton had a drive-through penalty following the race, which was then converted to say a 20-second time penalty due to speeding in the pit lane during the safety car period, which I find that hard to do. He was speeding in the same, which everyone is going through at the same time, and he was speeding in the pit lane. It's like, you're not going anywhere, Lewis.
It still brings to mind to me like how crazy it is that now that it's up to the teams to serve penalties, how many times penalties have been served incorrectly since they've started doing that. Like, why? You're just making this more frustrating for everyone because I'm sure the stewards and everyone are upset because now they're like, we gave you the penalty, just do it, or like it's more things for them to track and pay attention to during a race, and then the teams are frustrated because now they got to go and try to serve the penalty again. Like, I don't know. I still don't totally understand that one and why they've kept it the way they've kept it.
This weekend was a great example of not having a guy sitting there with the timer. And if you do it internally, you might shed a couple of seconds or 1/100th of a second, just saying, oh, it was 5 seconds, inflation, over under, like.
It's a rounding error. It's a rounding error, guys. Let it slip.
There has to be some form of error allowance potentially, right? Because every millisecond matters, right?
Yeah.
In this sport, that if it was 4.999 seconds as opposed to 5, you kind of let it go. You'd think, right? What's that? It is what it is.
Performance for Daniel Ricciardo. This was his joint highest finish after the 2023 Mexican Grand Prix, finishing 4th. And obviously, as we know, Max Verstappen achieved the fastest lap and won the sprint.
But not as by as a convincing margin as I thought it would, to be honest with you, because it was only like 3 seconds. So that kind of like bode well for the weekend in terms of maybe there's going to be some competitiveness during the race. And luckily enough, there was.
Yeah, McLaren brought some upgrades, and it seems like a lot of other teams are starting to bring a couple more as well. So it might be closing the gap between some of the cars that we were seeing before. And I, for one, love that because as we saw last year and even earlier this year, if you've got 30 seconds between the leader of a race and the guy in second, I'm sorry, but I just,
It's not watchable.
Exactly. Like a lot of the casters have been good at paying attention to what's going on in the midfield, but at the same time, you want the fun stuff to be at the front where the stakes are higher as opposed to being in the middle, right? So I, for one, am enjoying the fact that it was a 3.4 second gap from Max to Charles or whatever it was. So
after the race on Sunday, I don't know if it was McLaren's chief engineer, but he said the upgrades package were meant for further on, not just for Miami. So God knows what they're going to be able to do in Imola and well, is it Monaco after? I don't know. I'll check later.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
Monaco, and then wait, what's after Monaco?
Spanish Grand Prix, I think.
And then what's after Spanish Grand Prix?
Oh no, Spanish Grand Prix is later.
It's a little thing.
Spanish Grand Prix is later.
There's a little thing called the Canadian Grand Prix after the.
Yeah,
Bingo!
That's what's after Monaco. I know what day it is. I know where we are in the calendar.
It's Tuesday.
It's a Monday. Do you want to talk about Sunday, Erica?
Oh my
Congratulations.
God! Okay, everyone just give me 1 second. I'm gonna turn down the sensitivity on my mic and back away a little bit. That's my Lando Norris impression, and also noises similar to that which I made at Trinity Common while we were watching the race, and my boy broke the curse of
He finally did it. He finally did it. He won a race.
15 podiums without a win, and then on the 16th, he did it. I just,
And the
I know
shades
people
of
are...
Sochi 2021 are all gone now.
No, they're still there, but this does help compensate for it a little in some way. So
You know what's funny? I remember I went back after the race and listened to our reaction of the Sochi 2021 race
God.
during the first season, and I was clearly saying that Lando wasn't mature enough at that time to win.
Yeah.
I think he's matured quite a bit this season, and it's quite evident based on this race. And you know what? For winning his first GP, I thought his like overall reaction to winning was pretty reserved. To be honest with you, I thought he was going to be more just freaking out and everything like that, kind of like how Gasly or Leclerc did on their radios. But no, he was very much thankful of the team, thankful of Will, and it was really great to see that even like it was his moment, right, of shining, that he was still thanking everybody on the team for, sticking with him through those times and helping him win the race in that regards.
And I think, we've seen a fair amount of first race wins, whether if it was Ocon, whether if it's Pierre Gasly, and like the list can go on and on of what we've seen when we started this podcast. But I mean, yeah, like I could only imagine, Andrew, I probably said the same thing about Lando 3 years ago, that he's immature. He still has a lot to learn. And even in the start of the season, he's got to prove himself. And, everyone talks about the safety car intervention. And like, yes, that maybe played a factor in him winning the race, but what safety car has not played in a factor in other people's races?
It's
And like
literally
that,
how Max won the championship a few years
well, I
ago.
was going to Nicholas Latifi, the GOAT, but like, well, it's whatever.
But a safety car impacting it. Whatever.
Even, and I think that's what Max Verstappen tried to talk about in the post race, is like, everyone can focus so much on that, but like, let's talk about the race Lando won. The fact that he kept edging the gap, Max Verstappen. And it's usually Max Verstappen like closing the gap if he's ever behind. Full credit to Lando. This is obviously, yes, this is his best race ever, but like he deserves this 100%. And like he cried, you could tell he's crying. He called his parents, and every driver, think about it: Lewis Hamilton, Leclerc, George Russell, Carlos Sainz,
Max Verstappen.
Max Verstappen. And like, honestly, that was probably one of my favorite cool down rooms, because I'm pretty sure they all used to kart together.
They did, yeah.
And
There's
so they're all
so
just
many
little
photos
giddy.
of them.
And just like their face reactions, they're all giddy. They're excited that they can be in a room to celebrate that. And then the podium celebrations all spraying Lando Norris first, and then he was able to do the bottle. Yeah, and like people, I'm pretty sure there's people crying in Trinity comment that yesterday.
I mean, if they weren't there, it was emotional and it was charged at the very least. There were a lot of people in Papaya at the bar, more so than I've seen other times we've gone.
He's retiring. Isn't
He's
he
not
retired?
retiring. He
Stole my
made that
line
comment
later.
about how he was going to retire. Like,
This guy, I
Nico
had it all
Rosberg
planned up
retired.
for that.
He's been waiting. He's been waiting since Nico
He's
Rosberg.
24. He can't retire. He's still a baby. I also did point that out. So my cousin came and he's the same age as Lando Norris. And I was like, this guy's the same age as you. How does that feel? And he
That's
was like,
tough.
I don't watch this sport, but also shut up. So
God bless Graham.
Yeah, Lando Norris in 2023 last year said that Nico retired after he won his first championship. I'm going to retire after my first win. So McLaren's seat has opened next season, making silly season even sillier. Maybe the lead to take that seat would be Lance Stroll. I don't know.
it was a pretty exciting race.
Well, especially off turn one when we almost had Checo take out his own teammate, and I
He
don't know
went
if you saw his reaction in the post in the cool down room. Max was like, "Whoa!"
He had no idea how close his race was to ending before it even really started. It was very reminiscent of the Russell Sainz incident at Circuit of the Americas a few years
yeah.
ago, where George just went spearfishing and was like, I'm gonna make my own racing line, and then did that. It gave the same vibe of just coming out of nowhere where you shouldn't be.
Yeah.
But like right off the get-go, we saw that turmoil in turn one. If you're Norris, you're actually having like a bit of a scuffle, and I think he fell back a position from where he started. So he did have to fight his way through. I don't know, he was in P6 at one point
He
through to
dropped back
P1.
to drop back down to P7.
Oh, P7,
I
yeah.
think he was P7 because while he did not benefit from it, Piastri did. He was able to make
Yes.
a really cool move around sides in like turn 2, turn 3 to get into the podium position, which then created the battle of the day, I would say, between the two, and how Sainz was visibly and audibly pissed off with how the race was going.
Oh my goodness. Not even just between them, but about team orders, like wanting to have them swap out him and Leclerc with the order when they were back to back. He was having, like, I'd be scared to be his physician and to be checking what his heart rate was at that moment, because
Well, there was so much going on those first couple of laps. Like, just think about it. So one, yes, and I can agree with you, because I think Carlos was still pissed off the day before that he could not pass the V card of Daniel Ricciardo in 19 laps, and I get that, probably fumed. Then you had think about it. You had the instance there, Oscar Piastri, when that kerfuffle happened, was able to jump 3 spots. Then you also had Pierre Gasly and Ocon almost colliding with each other. I'm just trying to
Reminiscence
think.
of Baku 2017. If anyone wants to see the
Oh,
highlights between him and it was Ocon and Perez, and they were the street battling. They both were going into that straight and the turn. I swear, I think Ocon was gonna just destroy Gasly into the wall.
well, and it's also like Ocon and Gasly last year in Australia and stuff. Like, I don't know what it is with Ocon, but he likes to have a race with no one on the grid except his own teammate.
It's the French mindset, I
In
guess.
fairness, their car can only do that though.
You know what? That is fair. There is no one else nearby. So, but crazy stuff going on. K-Meg was also on his K-Meg BS yesterday, apparently doing more stuff. And I found it very entertaining no matter where on the track you were looking. Like people are trying to say that it was the safety car that gave Lando a leg up. He already had quite a bit of a gap on Verstappen at that point in time. It was an incredibly well-timed pit stop too, because who's to say waiting later in the safety car would have given him the same kind of advantage and outcome.
Did Burt Meinlander get confused about who was the race leader though?
I think he did. Yeah.
Because he stopped it right in front of Max, and I was like, "Wait, hold on a second here. You have Lando just kind of meandering around the track, right? Like really preserving his tire life at this point. To be like, Bert, no, it's the guy in front of you that's leading the
You
race."
might you might think that it's this guy, but that's just it's believe it or not, another person is leading the race that's not this guy. So
Look, we know that orange is like, Super Max, Netherlands, whatever, but like it's also a color of a team. Just saying.
yeah, just in case anyone needs a reminder, the papaya is its own thing. Max was struggling with the car throughout the entire race. We heard it even from the get-go when he was leading. He felt that there was not as much downforce. He was having a lot of issues with under and oversteer on the car. And we even saw it when he took that pylon out, right?
He
He
almost
didn't
wanted to
like
take
where
it
it was on the
home.
track.
I think that was his trophy. He was trying to take it home.
I thought it was Perez at first. I just assumed it was Perez. Nowhere in my mind
But to play a
did I
little
go,
devil's
yeah,
advocate as well, because you could see if you take a slow-mo, he really damaged the floor
yeah.
by hitting that. He took a lot. I think he made a big hole in the floor, which really hurt the aerodynamics of the car. So, and I watched a few laps on the F1 TV. I watched a few of Max's laps just purely right when he was behind because I didn't know if he was going to make the chase or not. You could clearly see Lando was just edging farther and farther away. And you're kind of like in shock. But then, a lot of the conversation between him and GP were that the tire deg was pretty bad and that, the under and the oversteers you mentioned, Erica, was even worse. Like he
Mhm.
could barely steer the cars in some turns and then he just oversteered the car in some turns, right? It wasn't really any clean racing, like as clean as Max Verstappen can. He just wasn't on his game there on Sunday. And, you know, kudos to Lando for taking full advantage of that.
Honestly, I was so overjoyed when he took the lead, but I have PTSD from past instances. And so for like 24 laps of the race, I was just sitting there like, I can't, people are like, oh, you're not even paying attention. I'm like, I can't because if I pay attention, something bad is going to happen. I just know it. I have just, it's going to be terrible. But he held it together. I also loved how it could have been so easy for Max to be like, well, he only won because I was having some of these issues and I bottomed out my car and all this
Yeah.
kind of stuff. But he still gave him the flowers and credit. Like they brought the upgrades, he was on his stuff, he was doing a good job, held it together instead of just trying to talk about like a myriad of other things. Because we have seen that side of Max before in a post race interview when things haven't gone his way. So he was I still think because even before all the really big issues hit the car that Lando still probably would have won this, but it's nice to know that everyone kind of gave credit where credit was due.
He sat in the wrong chair spot at the post race interview. And then I think it was Leclerc that pointed out, he's like, wait, you're over there, man. And also, I don't know if you noticed this in the cool down room, notice a little bit of the Easter eggs after the race where they all got helmets. I don't know, like, the football helmets. And
Yeah.
Verstappen said to Lando, he's like, you need this next time you go to Amsterdam because of his the
No,
nose.
so that was everyone's joking about how if you want to take a win away from Max, you have to get injured the week before because Carlos
Oh,
had his
Carlos, yeah.
appendicitis the week before and then last weekend or whatever Lando got his nose cut and
Isn't
then
he
he won
partying
the
like
next
too hard
race.
and he got injured doing that?
Yeah, that's that. And then he said, he's like, take this helmet next time you go to Amsterdam and party with Martin Garrix. You're gonna need this protection. I don't know if you also noticed this, but Oscar Piastri,
Oh,
let's talk about what the weekend that he was supposed to
man.
have, and then the awkward, controversial, confusing mind the gap, running Carlos over. It was a little bit of back and forth. I think both parties are guilty. Let's be real. Like yes, I can attest that I don't think the penalty was fair to Carlos. If you're going to give that to Carlos, but not give it to Oscar earlier. And then at the end of the race, towards the end of the race, I don't know if you guys saw this, but like they had to told Oscar to cool it to not cause a safety car because he's like, hey, by the way, Lando's running in the lead. Don't do anything stupid.
It was really unfortunate because it was so exciting to watch him racing at the front of the grid. Like, I know Sainz was frustrated, but it was entertaining for the rest of us to see the two of them go at it. I do agree with you. I think Oscar could have been more mindful of where he was on the track to not really force that awkward moment where Sainz had to go off. And then, Sainz is frustrated because he felt like he had the
He was
opportunity to
screaming into
overtake.
the mic.
I personally like looking at it, like I don't necessarily think the position should have been forfeit to Sainz in that scenario, but also like Piastri was kind of like, dude, like you knew he was right there. Why did you absolutely just like cut him off in a way? Um, so that one was a little snippy, but it kind of he was like a little overly aggressive, and it ended up costing him all of it in the long run because I mean he as much as he worked his way back to P13 once he had to come in and replace the nose and that front wing and stuff, you're too far gone in that race to really get your way back into the points, honestly.
But I really think, though, the true MVP of the day, we wouldn't have been able to have this win without a certain person who made a lot of moves there on Saturday in the penalty department. And that was Kevin Magnussen, on the verge of, a battle with Logan Sargent. By the way, in the preview show, Ricci, we called it Logan Sargent P20.
Did we get it?
And we did, because
Yeah.
Mr. DNF'd, because just
I
an
know.
unnecessary dive down on turn 2. I mean, and like Logan was way ahead, and he just puts it up on the inside of the car, and it's like, the hell are you doing, K-Mag? Like that, your responsibility is there to back off a little bit because there's legit no gap. And Logan clearly had the entire racing line on you, but you just said, nah, fuck it. I'm gonna go hit him in the side, completely busted the car up. And cheeky Max during the cool down room said at least they have another chassis, right?
Can you imagine if they didn't and it was just all of that same garbage again of people taking each other's cars and fixing them and stuff? Like, oh my God.
But the thing is, like, on
I
one
feel
hand, it's
bad.
like a ridiculous move by Magnussen, but on the other hand, it created like an eventful ending.
Yes. But I still feel so bad for Logan Sargent. Like, I know I've talked about this a lot. This guy is trying so hard. He's like doing everything he can outside of the actual races to be in peak form and be there. And a couple of times it has not been his fault. Like, in this instance, it was not his fault at all what happened. And I'm just like, I'm so hopeful that he scores a point or something. Like that would just make me so happy. And I feel like for him, it would mean so much. It would be like when Latifi and George had their whole back and forth the other year and finally scored a point. So make up for some of what he's experienced this year if that were to happen over at Williams. I don't know that it will, but
Hey,
a girl can dream.
Alpine get their first point of the season. That's just I got that as my notes. Controversial, but did you think that this was Leclerc's best weekend of driving, coming P2 in the sprint and then P3 on the race this past weekend? I think all things considered.
Honestly, the results kind of speak for it, right? As much as it maybe wasn't the weekend in which he put the most pressure on other people, it still paid off, I would say.
To be fair, like Kimi Räikkönen it during the race. He drove the entire race without water. There was a malfunction in the
Oh
supply,
Oh my
gosh.
so
gosh.
he did not have the drink, as they would say, as Kimi would said. And there were reported temperatures of 60 degrees Celsius in the cockpit during
Oh
the
my
race.
goodness.
And for
Ugh.
those who don't know, that is just really fucking hot. It's
It's
scorching.
it's like well over, what is it? That would be probably almost like 150 Fahrenheit, give or take a few degrees. What is
Yeah.
it? Like the easy math is double it and add 30, and that's the conversion. I don't know if at a certain point it kind of changes, but I know like what is
100,
it?
140 degrees Fahrenheit in the car.
Oh,
Jeez. Yeah, that's brutal. Like I've just been outside when it's like 110
Yeah.
Fahrenheit and that's bad enough. I can't imagine.
So to think he didn't have any water supply during the race and was still able to pull off a P3 finish, fend off Checo for a bit there too, right? With regards to rate, the race. So I agree, Charles. John, I think this was Charles' best weekend of the year, and hopefully he continues this type of form. Um, get more points for Ferrari in that regards.
I like it. We still got some Max is still leading by 33 points over his teammate in the championship, but we're seeing it get a little bit more exciting, right? Like Leclerc has 98, so he's right behind Checo at this point. We've got Sainz and Norris tied with 83 points now. That's super fun. Like we're seeing some neat stuff shake up in the drivers' championship, and I for one like that. Like it's not, I mean, 33 points is still a significant lead, but at least for second, third, fourth, it's not like all of Red Bull's running away with this. We've got some movement. We're gonna see some exciting stuff happen, especially as people bring upgrades to the cars. I think it's gonna make it super fun from here on out.
it takes one more DNF for Max, if possible, and the season can get just a little bit more interesting. I think one thing I have also noticed that this weekend, if we remember what like Sebastian Vettel said, that everybody is a Ferrari fan. It looked like everybody was a McLaren fan, and even so well that like Fred Vasseur was literally partying with McLaren and donning
Legend.
a papaya hat. Like this guy is just full on hilarious.
I love it. No one knew what to make of him when he was announced as the team principal for Ferrari. I absolutely think he was the right guy for the job because like we've seen it with some of the other team principals. The best team principals also have rapport with the other teams. And this weekend just definitely showed that Vasseur has that as well. Like to take the hat, to have the champagne, to be running around with them all, like icon stuff right there. That's iconic.
Well, and just a common respect too of every team as well, right? You can tell that Fred has that respect for McLaren and that respect for Lando too, because he was genuinely happy for Lando for winning his first race. And I think that's kind of a cool nugget about F1 is that yes, it's for millions of dollars. Yes, it's very competitive, but at the end of the day, it's the same 20 drivers, the same 10 team principals, and then that overall network is so tight too that it's quite fun.
And
But
talking about the support between the team principals, I'm going to bring it back again to the support from the other drivers for Lando's win. The number of times interviewers tried to entrap people with these weird questions to make them sound like they were talking smack about it, and for the other drivers to just shut it down, right? Like they go to George Russell and they're like, "You're no longer the last British race winner." And he's like, "That's a weird way of saying congrats to Lando." And then Max had the iconic line
oh, the quote of the year.
where they're saying, if it weren't for that safety car, you would have won. And he's like, "Well, if my mom had balls, she'd be my dad." Like,
Just inspired by Gino D'Acampo. If my grandmother had wheels, she'd be a bike.
I just,
Like to me, that is the quote of the year.
what was it? What other iconic quotes in recent memory from Max are just lol? And then,
Yeah.
and then if my mom had balls, she'd be my dad.
Just unbelievable.
Or when he was on live stream, I think he admitted that like something about like cases of Red Bull going to Nicholas Latifi when he was on a live
I
stream. Easton.
still gets his free annual yearly case of Red Bull.
So I just have to give it up. Like everyone was coming over even before he was off the track and got to congratulate his team. Like Alonso came running up. Lewis looked so genuinely happy for him when they were talking. Ocon's giving him a dab. Like Kevin and people came over too. So I just love that everyone was just on Team Lando after that happened. It was very exciting and made me even happier. Like you can revel in it more when people aren't talking smack about the guy and trying to be controversial about the win. They're just like, he earned it. He did a great job. We're happy for him. Off we go.
Speaking of Alonso, did you hear his quote going back to the sprint post?
Oh
Like
Just
post
no.
sprint?
quickly before you go there, but then also, I don't think you guys noticed this. Only one national anthem today.
Yes. Who was it, Ben? We were talking about it and was saying like the only other time we'll see that with the current situation of drivers and stuff would be if Alpine takes a dub. I don't think we're gonna see Alpine take a dub. So
Everybody would have to DNF in order for Alpine to get the dub.
we need another, what was it, like Hungary a few years ago?
Oh,
or-
yeah.
Sorry, I just want to make sure I get that in. Go, Andrew.
I would say
On that
like
point.
Alonso had such a hot mic after that sprint race, pretty much stating I think he got interviewed by Spanish press saying that, Lewis would not get penalized during his turn one incident in the sprint because he's quote unquote not Spanish. That was hilarious.
So many people latched onto that where they're talking about how if you're British, you don't get penalties, but everyone else on the grid of different nationalities would get a penalty. I was like, oh, oh, oh,
I mean,
is there truth to it? Maybe
there's I think a little bit of truth to it potentially. I don't know.
worth looking at.
But I say like there was a lot of celebrities there this weekend too. Zayn was spotted in the Aston Martin garage this week, and like Zayn, Aston Martin went one direction this weekend, and that was backwards. It's just Alonso scrapping for P9. It's just so hard to watch sometimes. And when you have Lance Stroll, who does nothing during the race but cause issues and, not even be competitive. But hey, the car is based around him apparently, which is just, enjoy.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the F1 podcast. Again, congratulations to Lando Norris for winning your first ever Formula One race.
Woo!
And we're hopeful for many more, just not against Ferrari. Make sure to hit that follow button on our Instagram page, Threads, TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast. I think I got them all. We're so close to 1,000. I don't know what our number is. I think we're not even like 30 off or something like that.
I checked today. I think we're like 973. We need
Ooh.
27 more. We're so close, y'all. We're
Subscribe.
so close.
Like, follow, do all the fun stuff.
Like us, follow us, fall in love with us. Come find us when we host things in person. Come meet other people who also like F1. Build a community, have a good time, take over the world, establish our own nation. Just girly things.
Tune in to next week's episode.
But before we go, a moment of silence. Rest in peace, May 5th, 2024. The Lando no wins memes are officially done.